Good morning, traders. This is Chris Buss with Traders Profit Compass with your morning look at markets for Tuesday, April 27th. It is 6:37 as I'm starting the video. Taking a quick look at markets, very quiet out there. Oil is up 0.75%, but other than that, I don't see anything other than the flat line. Just as a reminder for tonight, some important earnings announcements. AMD and Texas Instruments in the semiconductor sector after the bell. Microsoft and Google and Visa and Starbucks. All of those are all after the bell this morning. Before the bell, we've got, I believe, GE and UPS reporting. So those of you that are interested in that, be aware of that. And also, don't forget, we've got the FOMC meeting tomorrow. So what I'm going to do this morning is quickly go through the indexes and FATMAAN names as we always do. And then I'm going to spend a little time on the non-ferrous metals industry group, which is part of the materials group, which includes copper and steel and all that kind of stuff. So not a lot to talk about because yesterday was a very quiet day for the most part at the index and FATMAN level, but let's take a look at it. Okay, here's SPY 2 hour. I've slightly changed this trading range to include 418, and you can see that, you know, after yesterday's open, we spent the whole day in a very, very narrow range. Price seemed to find a hard ceiling at 418. So I've moved the active pivot up to that level. I don't see any reason, you know, to get long underneath 418 unless there's a pullback to support. So if you're waiting for a breakout, I would key off of 418. And if that can happen, then of course, blue skies above, and then you can set your stops just below 418. On the 30-minute chart, you can see that trading range from yesterday, 418 being the high side and 416.75 being the low side. Now this morning, if there's any, you know, pull-in or weakness ahead of, after the bell opens, excuse me, if you get a pull into 416.75, I'd be a buyer there with a stop just below, and then you can get a good entry and hopefully get a bounce back up to 14 and possibly get the breakout there. So, but very tight trading range. And remember, we've got the FOMC tomorrow, so I don't know if that is having a bearing on just, you know, an oscillation pattern, a holding pattern ahead of the Fed. You know, we often see that. But just have your levels in mind. Qs, what I've done here is marked the prior high at 342. If you got, you know, if you got long here on the back touch of that gap on Friday, then I mean you're fine. You should have raised up your stops and possibly even your strikes higher. If you're not in, I think you got to wait till either 342 on a breakout, or if it pulls back into 340, I think you can take a try long there with a stop just below. If you know, if the FANG names start to run prior to them reporting, then that'll obviously boost up the Qs. Here's the 30-minute chart. Here's the prior highs at 342, and I've got a layer of support here at 340. And as we just said, if you get a pull into 340, I'd be a buyer there, and then see if you can get the bounce back up to 342. Nice day for IWM, outperforming up 1%. Once it made its initial move and cleared this 227.50 level, just kind of died there. So if you get a pull in to like 228 right here, I'd be a buyer there with a stop just below. And certainly if you get a pullback to the top of the gap that holds, that's another place to buy. So I'd be looking for long entries for sure. I think IWM, after some choppiness back in here, I think is back on an upward trajectory going forward. Here I've marked yesterday's range as a little potential flag. Here's the flagpole. Here's the consolidation. The bottom of the flag is 227.50 and the top of the flag is 228.50. So I would trade around those ranges. And like I said, if the flag breaks and comes back in here to 226.75, top of the gap, I would try a long there. And if you get stopped out, I would try another long down at the bottom of the gap fill at 225.76. But I think ultimately it goes higher for IWM. If you're new here, I really appreciate you visiting the channel. Hit the subscribe button and alarm bell. That way you'll be notified of content when it's produced. And also jump over to the show notes where there's a link to register for all my content, not just for YouTube. And you'll get a nice email each and every time I publish, along with a link to the blog site where you can read in on articles and other helpful tips and tricks for traders at all levels. And of course, those that have been with me for a while, thank you very much for your time and interest. I really appreciate doing these charts for you, and I hope they're helping you in your trading and your investing. So hit the thumbs up and pass the link along to somebody in your trading circle that you think might benefit from the work. Moving on to FANG, kind of disappointing price action yesterday, to be honest. I was hoping for a little bit more enthusiasm, really didn't get that. Facebook, we had talked about if you wanted to get long against 302. Early on, the first couple candles tried to break out here above 305, ended up being a false breakout and then pulling back into this 302 area. So really nothing has changed. For me, I'm waiting for a 305 breakout to open up the door to 310 and possibly 314. It may not do that with the FOMC tomorrow. And then I believe they report Friday, or excuse me, when do they report? Yeah, they report tomorrow along with Apple after the bell. So it may not do anything until then, but, you know, be ready. Set your alarms at 305, or you can take it long at 302 if you get a little dip. But other than that, I don't see an immediate trade. Apple, very much the same deal. I mean, if nothing else, we know 135 is the wall right here. You know, trading range between 131.50 and 135. You know, we've got earnings tomorrow after the bell. The next big resistance level overhead is 137. And if it can clear that, then it's got some running room to the upside. So continue to use 135 as your pivot, with support levels at 134, 133, and then 131.50. I doubt you're going to see, you know, that big sell-off today. You know, may pull into 134. And if you want to take a shot, I think that's a good level to do it at, with a stop just below. And then, I mean, really at that point, you're just playing for $1 and hoping for a breakout. What I'm going to do is just probably sit on the sidelines until after the announcement, unless we get a breakout above 135 today, and I wouldn't hesitate taking that at all, and even holding overnight into tomorrow night's print. Tesla reported last night, so that information is not on here. We've got a main pivot at 725, and I looked in the pre-markets trading around 715. So here's how I would play it if you're interested. We know this 707 to 710 is a nice level of support. Support here, resistance here, resistance, resistance, resistance. So that's an important level. If it pulls in to say, 708, 707, 710, I think you can take it long there with a stop just below and see if you can get some upward momentum started to fill the open gap, which would take you up to what was the prior close? Which was 740. So you may be able to get like a $30 move off a 710 entry just by filling the gap. And then once you're above 725, I think that becomes then your pivot for higher, with 750 being overhead resistance, and then the next level above that, 780. So I think you can try a long against 710 if you get it, and shoot for 725, 740, and then 750. Microsoft didn't do anything yesterday. I did take a long position against 261. I will be out before earnings tonight, but hopefully get a little run into earnings today, and then I would closing that out before the bell. But going forward, I think 261 is your pivot. You don't want to see price come back inside this trading range. Otherwise, as we've discussed before, your target becomes the bottom of the box if price ends up coming back in. Amazon was real interesting yesterday. We had talked about the potential of Amazon doing a split. I mean, all of its peers have. I mean, Apple split, Tesla split. Google hasn't split yet, but has in the past. And, the rumor got out there that, okay, this time's going to be the split on Thursday after the bell. And you had a chance. And it was a slim chance, because I actually keep Amazon on my board at all times, because a lot of times I'm just trading the cues. So I have all the FANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, on my little matrix if I'm trading the cues, just to keep an eye on how those big components are doing. And I had actually mentioned in the trading room that it looked like 3350 was a hard ceiling because it had spent the whole day below. And then there was a 5-minute candle that broke above 3350. And just that fast, I mean, you had a massive, massive bar. And it was, once that rumor got out there, it just went straight up. So, I mean, if you didn't catch it at 3350, there was not a lot of space or time to get in. So if you got that, great, you're sitting pretty. If not, I mean, that's trading. It happens at times where it just moves too fast. Unless you had a buy order in, up here, I mean, you never would have gotten it. So today, as long as it holds 3,400, I think you stay long. And you may get another push up here to 3,440 and possibly even break out ahead of earnings. That's always possible. But I'd stay long against 3,400. That's the key pivot. And remember, We talked about this I guess it was last week. If you look at the Amazon weekly chart, it's clear as day. 3,400 on a weekly closing basis. If it can close above 3,400, it opens up a whole new range up to 3,900. So there's 500 of upside on a technical basis with a weekly close above 3,400. So keep that in mind. Even if you've never traded Amazon before, that would give an awesome entry point with a tight stop on a weekly basis if it can close above 3,400. Google did get a little bit of a pop yesterday. It reports tonight after the bell, along with Microsoft. I think you stay long against 2,300. Today, if it can take out yesterday's high at, let's call it 324.50, I think you can be a buyer there and see if you get a run into the earnings print. But if you got a pullback into 2,300, I think you can get long there too. And just, keep in mind what you're trying to do. Are you trying to capture earnings, or are you just trying to actively trade it during the day? There's a huge difference between the two. So anyways, your resistance is 23.24 and your support is 2,300. Netflix, I've made some adjustments on this chart to have this consolidation range go all the way down to 500. So we've got a $15 trading range in here after the gap down. I've put the gap in there. So if you want to actively trade that, you can buy at 500 with a stop just below and look for a move to 515. You can trade the breakout from 515 and try and get a fill all the way up to 550. Or if it looks like it's not going to have the power to get through 515, you can try a tactical short against that and look for a move back down to the bottom of the box with a stop just above. Okay, let's move on to the non-ferrous group, which includes copper and some other stocks. Freeport-McMoRan has already reported earnings and is breaking out above this 38 level. I like this one long into the summer. I think copper's going higher. There's a structural supply deficit in copper because nobody's put a dime into the mines in at least 10 years. Back in 2011 was the high in copper. And if you look at a copper chart, we're about to take out the all-time highs. So once that's taken out, and I don't have what that level is, but I think copper's going higher with demand surging, with the electrification. Copper is a massive component in all of these electrification projects, and I think it just goes higher from here. Yes, there'll be corrections along the way. That's always the case, but buying this breakout here against 38 would give you a nice level to shoot against going forward and into the summer. And I wouldn't hesitate to take Freeport long right here. MP, this is the MP Minerals. This is rare earths. Got a little carried away early in the year, and then they pulled the rug and brought it all the way back to $29. And now it's starting to bounce. We've got earnings in a couple weeks. I would just put this on your radar. I see the next level of overhead resistance right here at about 37. But then if it can clear 37, I think you're going back up to the highs. I like the name. I don't like the fact that, earnings are basically next week. Could it do something before then? Sure. If you wanted to, actively trade it. What I'd rather do is wait for earnings to clear and then see where the dust settles and see where we can get an entry point. TECK. TECK Resources is another copper and basic materials play. You can see here that it's starting to emerge from 22. Earnings are tomorrow, I believe. So I wouldn't jump into that today unless you were willing to take that earnings risk. I do expect them to have good earnings. You can see there weren't any massive rug pulls on their prior announcements. So if you're willing to ride out that volatility and play for the upside, I would go out into the summer. I would go out into June, July, depending on where the options are. I would get long. I would get long against 22 and maybe with a half position. And if you got any kind of pullback, you could add to it there. But I think TECK is going higher. Southern Copper also has earnings this week. Here's the chart. This 82 was an all-time high. So a little bit more messy of a setup in my opinion. I think you can get long against the 50 here at 71. But with earnings around the corner, I would wait on this. But I do like the name. So, if there was a pullback into 68, I'd definitely be a buyer there. If there's any kind of weakness on the earnings call. And while we're talking about it, Southern Copper, TECK to a lesser degree, and then Freeport. They're all copper plays. So you don't need to have positions, and I don't think it's appropriate to just pile in to all three. If you wanted to take two of them and do a half position in each, I think that's fine if you just wanted that diversity. But from a chart perspective, they're all the same trade. They'll move with copper. So use your discretion on which one you like. Just from a chart perspective, I like TECK and Freeport a little better than this setup because here you're kind of to a certain degree in no man's land. But that would change a lot if it pulled back into 68 on earnings. Let's wrap it up with this one. This is the Metals and Mining ETF. I went and looked up the components, and you can see this is 50% steel. Then you've got aluminum, gold, and copper. And you can see here that price is emerging. Has an emerging breakout here at 41.50. I mean, I like this setup. I think these natural resources are going to drive higher in this reflation trade, and I think there's going to be a resource grab. And you've got a nice line to shoot against at 41.50. And one thing that's nice about this one is, one, it's diversified. Two, you can hold through all the earnings announcements and you don't have to worry about single stock risk. And it's not all loaded to copper. So this would be a way of kind of diversifying your natural resource play and tilt this holding into steel and aluminum versus going out and trying to find steel stocks, going out and trying to find aluminum stocks. All these resources are going to move together for the most part. I think they're all going higher, at least in the near term. And so I like this as a way to trade it. And I looked at the options chain, And it's decent. I mean, there's not a ton of volume there, but I think if you use limit options and be patient, you will get a good fill. So I like this one long against 4150. Okay, let's wrap it up here. Let's see how Microsoft and Google and the tech complex does heading into the print. And hope you guys have a good day of trading. And remember, decide how you're playing these FATMAAN names, whether you're going to take on earnings or just trade around it. I'm going to be trading around it, as I said. Earnings are not my cup of tea anymore. So decide how you want to play it and then put together your strategy and stick to it. And we'll see how it goes. Thanks again for spending time with me. This has been Chris Butts with Trader's Profit Compass. Talk to you next time.